I'm going to call the meeting to order now. Good evening, everyone. This is the May 1st budget hearing, our annual budget hearing. There's no other business that we have before us tonight. We'll not be voting on anything. Just Mr. Moffat will make the budget presentation, and then the only other item on the agenda would be for any public comments. First order of business, did you have to read us in?
Right, I'll read the statement of compliance. This meeting is being held in conformity to the Open Publics Meeting Act. Proper public notice of the meeting was published in local papers on April 25, 28, 29, 2018. If any board member or member of the public in attendance believes that this meeting is in violation of the Open Publics Meeting Act, the Hoboken Board of Education requests that they make a statement at this time. The board wishes to make those in attendance aware that this meeting is being recorded on video and will be broadcast by the board at a later date on cable television channel 77 and FiOS channel 46. The full meeting recording will also be made available on board docs, which can be accessed through the district homepage. The Hoboken Board of Education is committed to preserving the decorum of the public process and is mindful that we live in an electronic age of computers, cell phones, and other electronic communication devices. Nevertheless, we respectfully request that all meeting participants kindly silence electronic devices during the course of the meeting, and if use of the device is necessary, we ask that you please leave the room and conduct the personal business. At that point, if we could please rise for a salute to the flag. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
And the roll call.
Miss Angley?
Here.
Miss Delara?
Here.
Miss Evans?
Here.
Miss Khanna?
Here.
Miss Sobolov?
Here.
Miss Dakirian?
Here.
Miss Walker? No, not present. And Mr. Cluffeld?
Here. We have a quorum. Meeting can begin. And Mr. Moffat, I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, in front of you, you should have a copy of the presentation in front of you. Attached to the back are the budget keys. These are familiar to you probably because the last meeting we had to discuss the budget, a lot of the same information. So the other document you also received is a Q&A. If anyone in the general public wants to see a copy of the presentation and the Q&A, it's up front here. All this information is going to be available tomorrow morning on our website or sometime during the day. We're going to post it up, and you can refer back to them as well. So again, thanks for coming tonight. This is really the discussion for a potential adoption of the budget, which will be at a later date. We basically submitted our preliminary budget to the Department of Education for review. It was approved, and we can advertise all the information contained in it. And again, we'll be taking formal action on it on the 8th of May. This is overall a review of what information is in the presentation. It's quite lengthy. I'm going to go over the highlights because a lot of this information is redundant from the last time we met. Like I said, it was approved by the county office with no changes, just some general questions and clarifications, but all the information that we looked at last meeting remain the same. Some of the big factors or high-level information that we were dealing with at the beginning of the process to develop the budget. We are in an improved financial condition. We have a healthy general surplus. We have healthy reserves, which puts us in a nice position then to create a budget. Including that, we also knew that we had some charter school increases that we continue to anticipate over time. We were anticipating some reduced income from rental to the preschool providers. We also wanted to continue to expand our technology, our whiteboards, LED boards across the district. We were also concerned about new textbook series, which we do every year. We also anticipated a decrease in state aid, which came to fruition. We had an increase in salaries because we had the teaching association was under contract, so we had those costs, and we knew the cost of health benefits were going to continue to increase. So part of the whole process, we continually review all the ups and downs in the budget, any areas and trends that we see an increase, or I should say increased surplus, or funds that will be available to us. We monitor them through the year, as well as areas that we are short, so we try to balance those. So by looking at not only the past year, but also the current trend beginning of this school year, which is 17-18, we were able to anticipate some changes and identified adjustments to the budget as we move forward in the creation cycle. Like I said, we had contracts completed, so we were able to load those into our system. We reviewed all the personal needs of each individual school and department. We also looked at current programs and expansions in current programs and services. And as I said, we looked at the spending for 17-18, which basically is the base for projecting to the future. Part of being a former Abbott v. Burke district, we have certain structural issues that can complicate the information. A lot of the board members have sat with me and we've gone over this information individually, and it's not always easy to look in the ads on a newspaper because they have an item called a school-based budget, which kind of clouds some of the issues as far as where the expenditures are. But what you need to know is most of the instructional expenses are carried in the school-based budget, which is part of how the information then is produced and reflected in various advertisements. So we have the school-based budget, which is Fund 15. We have mandated school-level programs, residual of whole school reform, particular a kindergarten program, full-day kindergarten program with respective kindergarten aides. We have a preschool program that's currently in place, so we've had them for a number of years. And we're also a part of what they call the School Development Authority, where it's the state of New Jersey that provides funds to keep our facilities in good repair and potentially address any facility needs in the future. That's part of being an Abbott v. Burke district. Some enrollment assumptions, which is key to projecting into the future. All indications over the past, I would say, at least 5 years is a continuing trend, increasing year after year pretty consistently. What you see on the slide is basically what the assumptions are this year. It's a 3.5% increase in our resident enrollment. And the students, particularly sensitive is the elementary school level. We continue to monitor the kindergarten cohort or a group coming in. All indications are it will continue to be a very large cohort moving through the system. And as I said, it's been a number of years, so that group of students, that means every year it's a larger and larger class. So those large classes are all the way up to the 3rd grade, so that's part of that 47 student projection for elementary schools. We have an unusually large, as far as you look at the trend, it's like a little blip. That 5th grade is now moving into 6th grade, so that changed from elementary school and transitioned to the middle school grades. So that net adjustment for our increase at the middle school is 39 students, and high school will remain relatively flat or stable. We're also a large part of our budget is the charter school payments or transfers. So we looked at the information provided by the Department of Education in our annual notice of state aid. So we've decided to anticipate 4 new students at the charter schools, and the breakout is on the slide. The biggest increases really are just 2 students at Ola and Elysian. Those are the enrollment, and now the impact on state aid actual increase on the payment transfer amount to each individual school actually will increase from what we have now as an adjusted 2017-2018 charter school transfer payment of $9.2 million, and it'll go up about $500,000 as indicated in the slide, with the biggest increase going to the OLA charter school. Here's the last few years of the appropriations. It's a continued increase as the charter schools have expanded through the years. Our increased transfer payment trended upwards, obviously. I just wanted you to note that we have a 9.9 amount in our current budget, which is 17-18. We've been notified by the Department of Education that it will be reduced down, and that's the notation, about $9.2 million roughly. It's still subject to some change by the end of the year because there's a final adjustment coming in June. So that'll confirm how many students are actually at the schools and the related payment. So that column, that's the one on the black towards the end there, 9.9, is anticipated to be reduced when it's audited at June 30. Part of the normal process is we look at the micro level in each individual department and school. We look at their, what I call, education foundation programs. Has to do with projected enrollments in each in particular school, with the idea that it will change over time. But we look at art, music, world language, any other individual Project Lead the Way, those type of programs that we've had initiatives over the years, make sure they're properly funded. When we look at the special education department, we make sure that the evaluations are covered with funding and appropriations, physical therapy services evaluations, and any type of service that's required by IEP. That will also include instruction as it relates to out-of-district placements. Some conversations we have at that level in special education has to do with returning students to less restrictive environments, which would be in the district. We also look at opportunities to expand the Autistic Supplemental Program, ABA. We look into potentially self-contained classrooms and resource rooms. Again, all those supplies and materials that support those areas we review as part of the normal budget process and develop the budget in the future on the department level. Technology goals, as stated before, we're always looking at student technology, particular whiteboards, a network of capabilities, software licenses, those type of things. They're all incorporated in the technology plan, so we look to continue to implement the technology ideas and initiatives district-wide, as well as things behind the scenes that you may not see right in front of a student, which would be like wireless access points and those type of things. And we were looking at expanding our inventory of Chromebooks and making sure every school had access to various carts and Chromebooks, as well as LED whiteboards. Security goals, again, we look into potentially a new position, a supervisory type position, as well as secured some additional resources for the systems that we have in place. We continually look at ways to expand our capabilities and various different systems, and meaning door entries, monitoring, and general security systems. Facility goals, again, these are things, the repairs and maintenance on our facilities. It's a required part of our budget, as you probably all know, and it's monitored by the Department of Ed. We report on it various times of the year, so we make sure the heat is on, air conditioning, if it's in place, that works, and electric, if it's broken or for some reason shorts out, we repair it. Fire alarm safety systems we make sure are in place. We require annual maintenance and preventative programs. We make sure resources are available for those. We also reach out and make sure our casualty and property insurance are in place. And when the SDA does make funds available to us, we help manage that and make sure it's being used appropriately. Various highlights, I won't go individually. These are things that were addressed in detail to the superintendent at our last meeting. These are different staffing of highlights, curricular highlights that all schools have. Individuals. The next one is the high school level. Again, these are all programs, athletic expansion type areas that we've looked into, newly designed programs. Again, rather than, you could all read that, and it was, again, elaborated upon. Middle school, we talked about a literacy program, field trips, make sure they have resources available, passport to learning as well. Budget highlights as it relates to elementary school levels, math program overhaul, again, passport to learning, make sure they're available and expanded, and advanced mathematics program. Early childhood education, again, we're always looking at that expanding program. From time to time, we're looking for new classrooms. We anticipate 4 additional classrooms. And we're also looking into other alternatives for pre-K. And then the technology, as I already touched upon, a little more detail there. So the appropriations then come in as projected in the budget right now. It expanded by $1.6 million, which roughly is 2.8%. And this is adjusted for prior year's encumbrances. These are resources and uses. That's similar to what we went over last time. There were some adjustments. I just want to highlight some of the areas that we were able to utilize funds that were released. Tax levy is identified at the $1.9 million. The general fund balance, we were able to increase that. Like as I stated earlier, we anticipated a loss in state aid, so we felt it was important to set aside some surplus in last year's budget to carry into this year's budget, which is the 18-19 budget. And we also had some funds released and available for charter schools. As you see, state aid decrease and other revenues net against that, so about $2.1 million. And then some uses, some areas that we expanded and are new to the budget. So we have new staff, that's 5 kindergarten/elementary teachers and related aides. We have a new security position as well as resources. We have a new lease purchase agreement which will support acquisition of student technology. Again, which includes Chromebook carts and LED whiteboards, as well as network upgrade as well. And we have some new increase, an increase in the lease purchases that we acquired for work this past summer, which included the move and renovation, I should say the renovation to this building, Demarest, to accommodate the middle school move, as well as some renovations district-wide. It also provided funds for technology, whiteboard acquisitions, and Chromebooks. So what was advertised in the paper is pretty much the same information. I will state that structurally we have the issue with the school-based budget. So school-based budget transfer is on the second page, which I'll flip back. It's that $27 million number, which is a pretty large number. It's not really well detailed in the information that is automatically generated from the Department of Education as part of the user-friendly budget. It's not too user-friendly, as you can see. But and what does it mean? It means that what you're seeing in front of you on this on this slide is basically what they call central office, which is Fund 11, and then there's a Fund 15, which is a school-based budget, which we really kind of have to add together to get a true picture of where we're spending our money. And there is a slide later on in the presentation that has it's a pie chart, and it kind of gives you an all-in number. So areas to look at. Again, you have the child study team expenditures are in central office. You have a tuition, which is on the top under support services. And then you have a lot of the central office staff, business office, facilities, maintenance, and custodial. You also are carrying a portion of the health benefits there. This is the remaining section of the budget. Okay, so the operating budget is really their day-to-day expenditures. That really comes in at about $58 million number on the top, on the far right. And as I said, there's a $27 million number that adds in. And then below that area, you have the preschool education aid and program. state projects, which are flow-through dollars that will be to non-public schools in Hoboken. And again, so it's strictly a pass-through portion. You have federal projects, which would be ESSA, which used to be called No Child Left Behind. Those revenues, and then that totals out to a total budget of $73,239,538. There is an adjustment, as you see on the bottom. We do have a responsibility to cover some expenditures as it relates to special ed as part of our pre-K program, as required by the state of New Jersey. And that's that $344,820 number. This is that pie chart I alluded to. Again, this is the $48,445,613 in total. The bigger expenditures, I'll just give you the top 5. You have the regular programs, which is the upper left side. When you come around the side, the second largest would be the charter school transfer amount, which comes in over 16.5%. Then you have employee benefits down towards the bottom is third, special education, and then custodial. As you go, they're really below 3 or below when you keep going around the pie. There's a little other section. We'll do another slide for that. I'll give you a little more detail on what that other is composed of. I just want to point out that if you have some questions on aids, I know some of the board members had questions on aid. One-to-one aids, special education-related aids, would be carried in the what's labeled child study team. Kindergarten aids would be carried in the regular program instruction area. That's the pie chart for the others. Again, there are a myriad of areas. The top 5, you'll have capital projects toward the bottom, which is mainly driven by the lease purchase agreements, as well as funds dedicated to the upkeep and any type of transitions over the summer to find new spaces for educational use. Second area, largest area, is attendance and social services on the bottom left. And coming around is speech and central services and administration, which comes in at less than 1.5%. That's the change in school-based budgets from year to year. And it's not to get too complicated, but there's a little bit of a shift in expenditures from central office out to the school level budgets. And that's mainly because we're trying to identify all the expenditures, focus on students, to be found in those budgets. So as the new requirement for the federal government to start producing data for school level information, that it's in the right location. And I anticipate in the next couple of years continuing to move expenditures out into the school-based budget from central office budget. So again, the appropriation overview, contractual increases, new positions, charter school payments, programs, initiatives, special education, those are the big ticket items. We get this question quite regularly. It has to do with legal costs. As you can see, it continues to work itself down. We still anticipate about $150,000 this year in appropriations, but if it comes in lower, as I've mentioned on the slide under 2008, anything that's not used is then available for redistribution in that fiscal year, or it could fall out to surplus. So as you can see this year, we're looking like we may save about $95,000 in that area that would be available for us to use at the end of the year. Again, the pre-K program is 3- and 4-year-olds, and that's the number that we have this year, $2.8 million for 18-19. Again, that's part of our budget. We have the NCLB IDEA. It's now called ESSA, I should say, Every Student Succeed Act. So we have resources for that, and that includes the Title I, Title II subgrants. The IDEA is focused on students with disabilities and special needs. So those are resources also part of our budget. Again, not part of our operating budget, but part of our restricted federal programs. Debt service, we don't have any debt service anticipated this year. Really, we haven't used it since 13-14. We had about $273,706. If the SDA in the future, we go out and maybe potentially bond or work a project with them, we may have it in the future. It is a separate part of the budget, and we would report out, and that's why the slide is here. Revenue, these are different types of revenue that you see. The largest portion is local taxes. Then you would get state aid, which is formula based, and it comes out once a year through the governor's budget address. We have restricted state aid. An example of that would be the preschool aid, which is focused just on that program. It's funds not to be used in a general fund or other programs. It's targeted for special ed. I'm sorry, this preschool aid is targeted to preschool program. And then we have the flow-through dollars on non-public, which is textbook, security, nursing, those type of things. Restricted federal, again, is NCLBE, SSA, IDEA, and then there are some non-public portions of those grants that, again, are above and beyond our operating budget. Revenue picture, what we raise for revenue to offset the appropriations. Local taxes, that's our total local tax levy that we asked the municipality to provide, and that's the $45.8 million number. We then have tuitions, which is student tuition revenue. We have rent. We do rent some of our properties or spaces in our properties to the pre-K providers. That would be rent in that area. Miscellaneous revenue, basically interest on deposits, rebates, and refunds. Budgeted fund balance towards the bottom. That is in addition to what we had budgeted last year. So we had $639,000 roughly budgeted from our fund balance, which is funds we used the prior year to reduce the desire to go and increase increase taxes or decrease programs. So we were able to tuck away additional $239,690, so we didn't have to go and raise taxes for that or cut programs. And that's the pie chart for the revenue. As you can tell, the largest section is the local tax, and second is state aid. And again, these revenues support the charter school transfer. So the transfer to charter schools comes from our local tax dollar. And these revenues, again, as reflected in the newspaper, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of the information you already have seen. I will highlight one area in the revenue from state sources. It's a little bit less when you hear the $213,000 reduction in state aid. That's net an increase in what we anticipate an extraordinary aid at the end of the year. This is an aid category that's based on eligible costs for special ed students. It's an application process. That information comes out usually, if we're lucky, July after the year ends, and we have some options, but we can use it for that year or roll it. But again, that is an area that we anticipate an increase. We have some federal dollars also, impact aid for housing, federal housing, as well as the SEMI program, which is the Medicaid reimbursement area. And again, there's that budget fund balance. And some of the same information against offsetting. So you have the revenue from state sources, that's a flow through. You have the preschool aid, and you have federal Title I, II, III, and so forth. So the revenue overview has to do a general fund tax increase by 4.5%, utilizing a 2% cap, as well as adjustments for enrollment increases and the growth of healthcare costs. We did experience a reduced state aid, declines in rental income and miscellaneous revenues, fund balance increase, as well as tuition from students, and that nets out to $1.6 million. And there's the increase again. I just want to point out the notation, the 2% includes the healthcare and enrollment increases. So enrollment adjustment was $718,200 and healthcare it was $362,272. Some various statistics that we report out on the minimum tax levy, as well as bank cap. There is no bank cap used in this budget, nor is any generated in the future year, so that's zero. There's the state aid. Just one thing on state aid. Last year, we kind of lived through something that was relatively unusual because we were told after the budget was approved and set in motion that the state wasn't going to provide, or they were going to decrease the amount of aid we received in a budget year. Again, it was the same number as this year. It's $213,000. What we were able to do is tighten our belts, and we were able to tuck away some surplus to cover that, and that was a $239,000 number that you've seen already. But the reason I mention it is that the storm seems to be brewing again. Last week, the Office of Legislative Services produced some information. Last year, the number we heard was 800. This year, we're hearing it's about $1 million. And if the governor sticks to what he said, that he wants to fully implement the formula, all formula state aid, over a 4-year period. So that was that 800 number if it was fully implemented. This year, it's about $1 million. So there is a chance that we're back in a situation where we might have to tighten our belts again after the budget is approved. We hope it's not. Some of the legislators are already talking about they want to hold harmless and all that, but again, that was what they said last year, so I just kind of want to put everyone on notice. We don't really anticipate much of a change in our fund balance. Our general unrestricted amount would probably stay at about $1.4 million. And anything additional to that, we'll look to increase our reserves. Reserve targets, general fund target of $1.4 million. Maintenance reserve, we have $1.1 million. And again, it's a target. We don't have this set. It's a goal if we have the funds available. Our capital reserve will be 10% of our long-range facility plan. That continues to be revisited and added to, so that will probably increase over time. But the target is 6.5. Again, things that are used, what we use capital funds for now, we've used it for temporary purposes to get the field turf redone at the high school 2 years ago. We did some internal renovations with the money on a temporary basis and went back to the reserve. We were able to at least finance some of that, some of those costs. This year, over the summer, this past year, I should say, we were able to do some of these renovations here and acquired some equipment, so we were able to at least purchase, so some of that money is going back. So this is a reserve that we continue to use, and we anticipate using it again next year if we have any residual dollars or needs that we identify from here until the end of the year. This is the tax impact slide. On a home assessed, this is an average assessed home, and we checked it with the city of Hoboken. Their average assessed value of a property is $521,200. So the tax impact would be an increase of $65.63. And we spread it over other values. And again, these are assessed values. And if you're trying to break it down by 100,000 assessed value, it's $12.59. So where does the tax increase go? The 1.9. So on the right side you have the dollars, and then you have on the left side the pie chart. So the majority of it is going to the contracted salaries, but then you have a big portion of new staff, new student technology, new security resources. So a big portion of the tax increase is going to support those new areas. But that's not to undercut some of the savings during the year, and any adjustments that we pick up on the line will help us with our push for our salaries, so we're able to do that as well. So there's the 1.9 and how that breaks out. And I think that may be the last slide. Yeah, so what's next? So it'll be again presented to the board on the May 8th. If it's approved and adopted, we then forward that information to the county office. They send it to the county freeholders for taxation purposes, as well as the city. And then mid-May, we'll open the budget for use of all schools and departments to start ordering for next year. And there is a chance that this thing can be modified moving forward, as I said about last year, is there are conditions where the state of New Jersey may have some changes for us down the line. But with that, that's the end of the presentation. So if the board has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Motter. Dr. Johnson, are you going to add anything tonight or no?
I'm okay. I went through the initiatives at the last meeting.
That's what I thought. Okay, so nothing to add tonight. Board members, I know we've been through this many times. Some of us have been meeting with Mr. Moffett in small groups or individually. Are there any questions tonight for Mr. Moffett, I don't think so.
Any questions?
No, okay. Then there would be time for public comments. Actually, before you get up, Mr. Murray, I saw you sign up for public comment. Was anybody else signed up? Are you the first one to sign up? I just wanted to, forgive me, this is not addressed to you, but I have a new habit now before public comments to remind everyone that you have 5 minutes to speak, and please begin your comments with your name, municipality of residence, and if you're speaking on behalf of an organization, any affiliation that you have. And there are 2 speakers tonight, am I correct in that, Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Okay, then you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Brian Murray, 1100 Maxwell Lane, Hoboken.
Right.
My favorite meeting of the year is always the budget meeting. Because when you really dig down through the numbers, there's some truths and there's some half-truths that end up in these numbers. You know, specifically, I take issue with the tax levy increase that the board always uses as the average assessed value, and I think you used a property at $521,000 as the average assessed value. Now, we didn't have a tax reval that long ago, so the tax levy should be pretty close in line with the assessed value or the market value of a home, fairly close. So for $521,000, that will put you in a 1-bedroom in Hoboken. Not even a 2-bedroom unless it's a 5th floor walk up, about 700 square feet. So 80% of the people in Hoboken that own a condo are paying more than, their assessed value is more than $521,000. Now if you add in some commercial and everything else, you can make the numbers say what they want. But for average homeowners, the levy is 50% to 100% more than the number that you're using. I'm curious about your question 4, which says the board doesn't have to go out to a budget vote, and you talk about a 2% increase, where the levy is really 4.5%. It's 4.5% every single year. The taxpayers get hit with a 4% increase. That translates into about a 1 or 1.25% increase in our actual taxes, but every year it's the same. Every year I come up here and say, why can't we just go to a real budget vote where the public gets to vote on it? Let's create a real budget that makes real sense for Hoboken and not keep I'm sure you would all like to not have to be constrained with 4.5% increases, because it doesn't do anything. It keeps the engine running, but nothing more than that. So let's have a legitimate, honest conversation about what it takes to move the Hoboken schools forward with a real budget, and just not stopgap measures. My biggest concern is always that I think, you put the stat up there that the overhead is only about $2,200 a pupil. That's fine. When we look at it, we say the cost of a charter student is about $12,700. The cost of a school choice, the payment for a school choice person, I think, was about $16,000 or $17,000. Maybe I got that number wrong, but certainly much more than what we're paying out for a charter school person. And then when it wasn't in this presentation, but the stat in the paper for the cost per pupil in the Hoboken public schools was well over $20,000, I believe. So there's some discrepancies there as to, like, if we were just running a business, why wouldn't we want to say, well, if this were truly a business, we'd want everybody to go to the charter schools, shut down, and it would cost the taxpayers a lot less money. Or we would want to say, hey, look, if we can get all school choice people in and make a profit, why wouldn't we do that? or if we're not making a profit on those school choice kids, why would we let them in at all? So there's always, when it comes to the budget, it's not about anything but about the numbers and saying, hey, why are we not making other decisions or looking at it in an honest way to figure out, when you say, hey, it's 2,200 extra in administrative costs. Well, that's great. Well, within the local district, that might be reasonable. And it might be. But where it really kills us is when year after year I come up here and say, what are we doing about really negotiating with our teachers and their whole package? It's not any one teacher, but a third of the increase in our taxes this year is just going to meet things you've already agreed to. How are we ever going to get ahead if we're just making these increases and giving a third of it to increases that were promised here? And that's really where we have to look at it. And year over year over year, we are not holding that union accountable for the dollars and the struggles, and that's really taking money out of all the rest of the things. So, it's unfortunate that I come up and talk about the same things year over year, and they end up being the same things that I have to come up year over year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
I have questions as well.
We don't. There's no questions here. You're welcome to submit questions
Later.
to the budget,
Yeah. Okay.
but you may make any comment.
Okay. So
I'm sorry.
looking through the budget.
I'm sorry. Your name, municipality of residence.
Hoboken.
Okay.
Hoboken, Viorel Dragna. Dr. Viorel Dragna.
Okay.
So the cost per student in the traditional public schools in Hoboken is among the highest in New Jersey, while the test results are the worst. How are you planning to change things and stop wasting the taxpayers' money somehow? And another one, last time when I came here, I asked why we spend so much on the traditional public schools. And the answer was that we spend more money for the charter schools because the charter schools don't have high schools, right? Don't have a high school. And then I went home and I found out the charter schools have high schools in Hoboken. So that was a lie. So business administrator William Moffitt lied to me. What's the penalty for lying to the taxpayers?
Thank you. I think there's one charter school in Hoboken that has a small high school and two do night. Right? Any other public comments? The place to submit questions is
budget questions at Hoboken.
it on this sheet?
No, we could add it, we definitely add it.
There's somewhere. I read it somewhere.
Budget questions at Hoboken.k12.
It's budget questions at hoboken.k12.nj.us. Any other comments? Motion to close?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.